My name's Eric Monroe, I'm 39, and up until a few months ago, I thought I had things figured out. Not perfect, sure, who has that? But steady. Safe. 12 years with Tessa. 9 of those married. We had routines. Inside jokes. Shared playlists on Spotify. A dog we almost adopted but didn't. We were, in my mind, solid. The kind of couple people envy from a distance but forget to ask about up close. I didn't realize that what we had was starting to rot. Not until the Thursday I came home early. It wasn't even planned. My conference in Chicago had wrapped ahead of schedule, and instead of grabbing drinks with the guys, I hopped a late flight and surprised myself by wanting to surprise her. That should have been a sign already that I was craving closeness, something she hadn't offered in a while. But I didn't think too hard on the plane. I just imagined her face lighting up when I walked in, imagined putting my bag down and her arms around me, imagine that sleepy, easy smile I used to get from her. Only that's not what I got. When I pulled into the driveway around 8:40 p.m., the first thing that hit me was her car. It was just sitting there, right in its usual spot. And my stomach dropped. See, Tessa was supposed to be in Atlanta. She'd told me 2 nights ago that she was heading there for a Women in Business forum. Something at the Omni. She even sent me the itinerary. I remember reading it while waiting for takeout in my hotel room. She said she'd be back Friday night, latest. So why was her car here? For a second I thought maybe she got back early too. Coincidence? It could happen. But as I got out of my car, every step toward the door made that little voice in the back of my head louder. The porch light was off. The blinds were drawn. No music, no TV sounds. Just quiet. Too quiet. I tried the door. Locked. That never happens. In 12 years of knowing Tessa, I could count on one hand how many times she locked the door when she was home. Not because she's careless, she's not, but because we live in a quiet, tucked-away neighborhood with nosy neighbors and a lot of trust. If anything, she left it open for me out of habit. The fact that it was locked, that felt deliberate. I knocked once. Nothing. Knocked again, harder this time. I heard shuffling. Then footsteps. Then the door cracked only an inch or two, and there she was. Tessa looked, caught. Her eyes wide like a deer, her hair up in one of those haphazard buns she only did when she was flustered or tired. She was wearing leggings and a zip-up hoodie I didn't recognize. She kept her hand on the edge of the door. "Eric," she said, voice light. "You're home early." "Yeah," I replied, searching her face. "Flight's wrapped early. Thought I'd surprise you." She laughed, a short, strange sound. "Well, color me surprised." Then she paused. Just a second too long. "I was just entertaining a colleague," she added. She dropped by. Totally unexpected. We were about to start dinner. She still hadn't opened the door all the way. "Really?" I asked, glancing past her shoulder. She didn't budge. Then she added, "Hey, would you mind running to the store real quick? We're out of wine and bread." I was going to send her home soon anyway, but I figured we could make it a cozy night, you and me. "You must be tired." I blinked. I hadn't even stepped inside and already I was being sent out again. "Bread and wine," I repeated. She smiled, eyes a little too wide. "Yeah. Just like whatever goes with pasta." Surprise me. She never asked me to run out, not like that. And when we entertained, even casually, she always had things prepped ahead. She hated last-minute hosting. This wasn't just unusual. It was off. But I didn't push. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way she was watching me, like she was waiting to see if I'd press her. Maybe I didn't want to see whatever she was hiding. So I nodded. "Sure," I said, backing away. "Be right back." She shut the door gently. Not a word of thanks. The drive to the store was short, 10 minutes, tops, but I took longer than I needed to. I wandered the wine aisle aimlessly. My head was buzzing. I kept playing the scene back. Her tone. Her body language. The locked door. The quick ask to leave. Something in me, the part that notices patterns, that sees through people at work, was screaming. I came back around 9:15. This time, the door was unlocked. The lights were on. Music was playing softly from the kitchen, jazz, I think. Something she only played when she was trying to set a mood. Tessa greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. "Glad you're back," she said. "Sorry for the weird welcome. That friend had to jet, kid got sick or something." I nodded. "Hope she's okay." "She will be," she said, heading back to the kitchen. "Dinner's almost ready." But here's the thing, the place didn't smell like food. Not even close. No garlic, no onions, no anything. Just a hint of her perfume, that new one she started wearing in March. The one I hadn't picked out for her and she never wore around me. I dropped the grocery bag on the counter and scanned the kitchen. One pot on the stove. Not boiling. One wine glass on the counter. One mug in the sink. I checked the living room. No jackets, no purse that didn't belong to her. No extra shoes by the door. The hallway was quiet. The bathroom towel was dry and only one had been used. Everything looked like she'd been alone the entire time. Too alone. Tessa, I said after a minute, what was your colleague's name again? She paused. Mara. From design. Don't think I've heard of her. Oh, she's new, she said quickly, too quickly. Joined in February. Super sweet. I nodded slowly, not really hearing the answer. We ate. Or she did. I mostly pushed my food around the plate, chewing on everything but the food, her words, her tone, the way she didn't ask a single thing about my trip. After dinner, she curled up on the couch with her phone, scrolling in silence. Screen turned down when I walked past. I didn't press her that night. Didn't ask again about Mara. Didn't ask why she was supposed to be in Atlanta or what really happened in the 40 minutes I was gone. But I didn't sleep either. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, hearing every creak in the house and feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Doubt. Not just in her, but in us. And that was the first night I admitted it, not out loud, not to her, but to myself. Tessa had lied to me. To my face. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't believe she loved me enough to tell the truth. The morning after that strange wine and pasta charade, I called out of work. Didn't even bother making an excuse. Just said I needed a day. And I did. Not for rest. Not for errands. I needed to think. I needed to sit with the feeling that had been slowly growing inside me like a crack in glass, the kind that starts small, almost invisible, and then spreads when you're not looking. I told myself I was probably overthinking. That everyone's entitled to a weird night. That maybe Tessa had planned a quiet dinner with a friend and I really had just caught her off guard. But I didn't believe it. Not really. Not anymore. Because the truth is, that night didn't come out of nowhere. It was just the first time the mask slipped. I spent most of that morning walking in circles around our living room, seeing our life with new eyes. And the more I looked, the more I started piecing things together, details I'd ignored, brushed aside, or explained away because I didn't want to think badly of the woman I married. Like her business trips. They used to be rare. Once, maybe twice a year. But over the last year and a half, they started popping up out of nowhere. Always last minute. Always a little vague. She'd say things like, just a quick thing in Nashville, or some leadership summit outside Raleigh. No exact addresses. No names of colleagues. No real photos from the events. Just hotel selfies and smiling emojis. Sometimes she came back with new clothes I'd never seen before. Dresses still smelling faintly like cologne that wasn't mine. Once she came home with a small bruise on her shoulder. She told me she'd bumped into a cabinet corner in her hotel room. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to be the guy, the suspicious husband who reads too much into everything. But now? Now I replayed those little moments like evidence in a courtroom. The second thing that stuck with me was her perfume. Tessa had worn the same fragrance for years. Something light and floral. I used to joke that I could find her in a crowd blindfolded because of it. But sometime last spring she switched to something deeper, muskier. I remember asking her why and she just said I felt like changing it up. It shouldn't have bothered me. But it did. Because she didn't wear it around me. She sprayed it on right before leaving the house. Wore it on those work dinners and strategy sessions. She'd come home smelling like someone else's life. And then there were the little things. The things you almost miss when you're trying too hard to be trusting. New lingerie she never wore around me. Tags still attached. Stuffed into drawers. Hidden beneath t-shirts. I found a receipt for one set that she bought 3 days before she left for a 3-night seminar. She never mentioned it. Her phone started going everywhere with her. Even to the bathroom. And she never left it face up anymore. She used to scroll in bed next to me, show me memes, ask about funny posts from high school friends. That stopped. Completely. If I walked into the room, she'd quickly hit the lock button or flip the screen over. When I asked her about it once, she laughed and said, it's just muscle memory. Don't make it weird. And maybe the worst one, the one that still haunts me, was the night she muttered a name in her sleep. Grayson. It was around 2 a.m., maybe later. I was half awake, still coming down from a late-night coffee binge. I'd been tossing and turning, and then I heard it. Grayson, she said, soft and slow. Almost like a sigh. I sat up. What? I asked. She didn't respond, just shifted and turned her back to me. The next morning, I brought it up, trying to sound light. Who's Grayson? I said, smirking as I poured us coffee. She didn't miss a beat. Oh, he's our new project contractor. Has this deep, radio host voice. Must have stuck in my subconscious. You know how brains are weird like that. She even added a shrug and sipped her coffee like nothing. I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to. The alternative that my wife was dreaming about another man was too much. I told myself it was harmless, that I was being paranoid. But sitting on the couch that morning, staring at our wedding photo on the wall, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I had stopped asking questions because I was afraid of the answers. Because once you let yourself believe the person you love is capable of betrayal, the whole structure starts to wobble. So I buried it. I buried all of it. I told myself people grow and they change and not every change is sinister. I reminded myself that we'd both been stressed. That work had been crazy. That we hadn't had a proper vacation in 2 years. That maybe we were just drifting. But here's the thing, drifting only happens when one person stops paddling. And the truth was I'd been paddling alone. I was the one initiating date nights. I was the one asking about her day. I was the one still texting her just to say thinking about you. And lately all I got back were emojis. Thumbs ups. One-word answers. Or nothing. We used to have this Sunday ritual where we'd drink coffee on the back porch and plan our week together. It was small, but it mattered. It felt like a check-in. But that had stopped too. She said she needed alone time now that work drained her and she didn't want to spend every moment plugged into couple mode. Couple mode? That phrase stuck with me. Like being married was a setting she could turn off. I thought maybe therapy would help. I even floated the idea once gently. Said we'd been a little disconnected and maybe talking to someone could help us feel closer again. She brushed it off instantly. We're not that kind of couple, Eric. That kind of couple. As if getting help was shameful. As if it meant we were broken. I sat there for hours that day, revisiting every strange moment, every time she'd pulled away emotionally, every excuse that hadn't quite landed. It felt like waking up to a puzzle you didn't realize you'd been assembling. And once you see the full picture, the pattern of distance, avoidance, deception, you can't unsee it. That night, we had dinner together again. She was calm, almost cheerful. Talked about a new intern she was mentoring. Told me about a client pitch that got moved. I nodded, smiled, asked follow-ups. But inside? Inside, I was watching her. Every blink. Every deflection. Every second she looked at her phone instead of me. I wasn't ready to accuse her of anything. Not yet. But I had stopped making excuses for her. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt like a stranger was sitting across from me at the table. Not an enemy. Not yet. Just someone I didn't know anymore. A week passed after the door incident and things between Tessa and me felt muted. Not calmer, not better, just quieter. Like when the sky goes still before a storm. She moved around the house like everything was normal. Smiled a little more. Kissed me goodbye every morning. Made a few comments about us needing to plan a vacation this year, maybe something beachy. It was all so carefully rehearsed, I almost wanted to applaud. But the thing about pretending is that it only works when the other person wants to play along. I didn't. I couldn't. Because something inside me had shifted that night. Whatever blind faith I'd held onto, that innocent version of trust you give someone when you're building a life together, it was gone. I didn't trust her anymore. And as painful as that was to admit, it was the only honest thing I felt. So when Tessa said she had a 3-day conference in Raleigh, I didn't argue. I just nodded, watched her pack her suitcase with mechanical precision, and said, "Text me when you get there." She smiled and kissed me on the cheek like always. But I caught her checking the mirror twice before heading out the door. Her hair was curled. Nails done. A little extra perfume behind the ears. She was glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months. Not for me. Never for me. She left Thursday morning. Said she'd be back Sunday night. Supposedly staying at a downtown hotel with some marketing team leads. I told her to send the itinerary so I'd know when to expect her. She never did. Instead of pushing, I made a decision. If she wasn't going to give me the truth, I'd go find it myself. A friend of mine, Jason, works in event coordination. He's the kind of guy who knows everyone and everything happening in a 50-mile radius. I called him that afternoon, casually asked if he knew anything about a conference downtown that weekend. There was supposed to be one, he said. But it got canned. Storm warnings. They pulled the plug Tuesday. Are you sure? I asked, even though I knew he was. Positive. Why? No reason, I replied, even though everything inside me was screaming. The rest of the day passed in a daze. I couldn't concentrate. Couldn't eat. I just kept going back to that moment on the porch, her eyes flicking sideways, the locked door, the missing second glass. And now this. A canceled event she was supposedly attending. That night, I checked the camera app I'd installed last month without telling her. It was hidden in the living room, discreet enough to blend in with the bookshelf. I hadn't even touched it since setting it up, convinced I was being paranoid. But now? Now it felt like insurance. At 1:14 a.m. the app sent a motion alert. Someone entered the house. Not Tessa, she was already supposed to be in Raleigh. I watched the footage, heart pounding. The door opened. A man walked in. Broad shoulders. Confident posture. Dark coat. He moved like he belonged there, not like someone breaking in, but like someone who had done this before. He didn't turn on the lights. He just went straight upstairs. The video cut off after 60 seconds. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My brain was a hurricane. I kept telling myself I needed more than suspicion. I needed facts. Evidence. Something undeniable. So the next morning I left work early and drove home. Tessa's car was gone, probably wherever she was hiding her fake conference. I stepped inside the house like it might explode. At first glance, everything looked normal. Too normal. But the smell hit me almost immediately. Cologne. Heavy. Masculine. Not mine. And something else, smoke. Not fire. Cigarettes. Neither of us smoked. Tessa hated it. I walked upstairs and paused at the bedroom door. Opened it slowly. The bed was made, but the room felt off. The window was cracked open, probably to air it out. But it was too late. The scent lingered. I walked to her side of the bed. Something shiny caught my eye near the nightstand. A cufflink. Silver. Engraved. I picked it up and turned it over. G.H. I stared at it for a long time, as if it might suddenly rearrange itself into something innocent. Something harmless. Something that didn't confirm what I already knew. But it didn't. It just sat there in my hand, cold and solid and real. A man had been here. While I was at work. While she was supposed to be miles away. I didn't yell. I didn't punch a wall. I didn't cry. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the cufflink in my palm, the bed in the background. Then I put it back exactly where I found it and walked downstairs. I couldn't be in that house any longer. Not with the walls feeling like they were closing in. Not with every step echoing betrayal. So I left. I drove for hours with no real destination. Just miles and static. I played songs from our early years, not because I wanted to feel anything, but because I needed to remind myself of what was now broken. She came home that evening around 7. I was back by then. Sitting at the dining table. Calm. Tired. Hey, she said, dropping her purse on the counter. I'm exhausted. I didn't answer. She looked at me, eyebrows raised. Everything okay? I nodded slowly. Yeah. She smiled, walked past me toward the bathroom. I gave it 30 seconds, then opened her suitcase. She'd left it by the door, still zipped. I unzipped it. Neatly folded clothes. Hairbrush. A small bottle of the perfume I'd started to resent. And near the bottom, tucked into a side pouch, a second pair of men's socks. Not mine. I took the cufflink from my pocket and placed it gently on top of her folded sweater. Then I zipped the suitcase shut and waited. When she walked out of the shower 10 minutes later, towel wrapped around her, she spotted the suitcase. She opened it automatically. And froze. Her hand hovered over the cufflink like it had burned her. I watched her face go pale. She looked up at me, eyes wide. Eric. I didn't say anything. She stepped forward, her voice shaking. It's not what you think. I stood slowly and met her eyes. I don't think anymore, I said. I know. She opened her mouth like she was going to protest, spin something, make up a story, scramble for footing. But nothing came out. She just stood there, damp hair falling over her shoulders, towel clenched in one hand, guilt written across every inch of her face. I walked past her, headed toward the hallway, and stopped just long enough to add, you could have told me when you stopped choosing me. She didn't follow me. She didn't say a word. And that silence, that hollow, heavy silence, said more than any confession ever could. After the suitcase. After the cufflink. After her silence, that thunderous silence, something in me shifted. I didn't explode. Didn't throw her things in the yard. I didn't even ask who GH was. I didn't want her version of the truth. Not anymore. I had facts. I had instincts. I had a marriage that no longer felt real and a wife who'd quietly walked out of it while still living in our house. I just needed space, mental space. So I made a plan, waited out. Watch her unravel. We had a dinner planned for that Saturday night. A group thing. For couples, longtime friends, people who'd known us for years. The kind of gathering where everyone brings a bottle of wine, trades work horror stories, and laughs too loudly over inside jokes we've all heard a dozen times. When Tessa suggested we cancel, her voice carefully casual, I told her no. I wanted that night to happen. Because I wanted to see her lie not just to me, but to everyone. I wanted to watch her perform. Saturday came. She wore a dress I hadn't seen before, navy blue, low-cut, confident. Her smile was polished, her makeup perfect. It was almost impressive how flawlessly she could act like we were still okay. That she was okay. But I didn't say a word. The guests arrived one by one, and the house filled with the usual buzz of chatter and clinking glasses. Everyone seemed relaxed, comfortable, unaware. Dinner was potluck style. I grilled chicken skewers, and one of our friends brought some pasta salad that everyone pretended to like. The music was low, the lighting soft, and for a brief moment it almost felt normal. Until Tessa decided to get clever. We were mid-meal, plates half full, when she raised her glass and said with a laugh, "Can we just take a moment to appreciate how dramatic Eric's been lately?" Everyone chuckled politely. I looked at her. She didn't look back. She went on, "Seriously, he got all worked up the other night because I said a coworker's name in my sleep." She looked around the table waiting for laughs. A few people gave tight smiles. No one knew what to say. "Can you believe that?" she added. "It was Grayson, our project contractor. I mean, the guy has a voice like a late-night DJ. No wonder it got stuck in my head." She laughed again. Alone this time. I put my fork down and calmly said, "Yeah, that was funny." Tessa blinked. I turned to the table, slow and deliberate. It was almost as funny as finding a man's cufflink on our nightstand the other day. Dead silence. You could hear the hum of the fridge. Someone coughed. Another person reached for their wine glass, clearly wishing it were stronger. Tessa froze. Her smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. "Oh," I said, still facing our guests. "Didn't she tell you guys about that part?" No one spoke. I leaned back in my chair, completely still. Found it tucked right next to her side of the bed. Engraved. "Jeech." She said it wasn't what I thought. I turned back to her. Her eyes were wide, her hands still gripping her wine glass like it might steady her. "But here's the thing," I said, voice quiet now. "I'm not thinking anymore. I'm done thinking." "I know." She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "Eric, can we talk privately, please?" I shook my head. "No. You made it public when you made me the punchline." She walked toward the kitchen without another word. I stayed at the table. Nobody laughed after that. Nobody dared. A few people tried to change the subject, awkwardly asking about a new restaurant in town. Someone got up to help clean dishes they hadn't even finished. The whole dinner deflated in slow motion. And I sat in it. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. Not behind closed doors. Not whispered or rationalized or softened by tears. I wanted the truth to take up space. Later that night, after everyone left in a fog of discomfort and polite goodbyes, she found me on the porch. "Why would you do that?" she asked, arms folded across her chest. "Why humiliate me like that in front of our friends?" I didn't look at her. "You humiliated yourself." I just stopped covering for it. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "You don't get to be angry," I said. "You don't get to act like the victim. I gave you 1,000 opportunities to be honest. You chose lies. Every time." Her voice softened. "Eric, we can fix this. Please." I finally looked at her. "Can we?" She didn't respond. "You had a choice," I said. "You made it. Now I get to make mine." She looked like she wanted to say something, anything, but couldn't find the words. So she just stood there, barefoot, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. But it was 70 degrees. And she didn't look sad. She looked exposed. The next morning I started packing. Not her stuff, mine. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to plead. I wasn't going to stay in a house where I had to pretend I didn't see what was right in front of me. I didn't tell her when I was leaving. I just gathered the things that mattered, a few clothes, my laptop, the stack of notebooks I used for work ideas. I left the wedding photo on the nightstand. I didn't need it. As I zipped my bag, she walked into the room, still in pajamas. "Where are you going?" "Out," I said. "For how long?" I shrugged. Her eyes filled, but I didn't trust that anymore. She'd cried before and still lied afterward. "You're just leaving?" she asked. "I stayed long enough," I replied. She stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can't we just talk?" "We did," I said. "You just weren't listening." She didn't block the door. Didn't beg. She just watched me walk out the same way I'd watched her disappear one piece at a time over the last year. The air outside felt different. Lighter. I got in the car. Drove toward nowhere in particular. Wound up at a lakeside motel. The kind with outdated carpet and creaky floors, but clean sheets and a working lock. I booked 3 nights. That night, I sat on the little balcony with a cheap plastic chair, a takeout sandwich, and my thoughts. And for the first time since everything started unraveling, I didn't feel like I was drowning in it. Because I hadn't stayed silent. And that was the first real breath I'd taken in a long time. I stayed at the motel for 3 nights. Just me, my thoughts, and the kind of silence I hadn't felt in years. Not the kind that lingers like tension in a house. This was the other kind, the kind that lets you breathe. The kind that gives you space to think without someone else's energy crowding your skin. On the second night, I stood by the lake as the sun went down, bright orange turning to purple, the sky folding into itself. I watched a family of ducks glide across the water. I don't know why, but that image stuck with me. They moved so simply, so clearly. No questions. No hidden meanings. It hit me then. I'd been trying to make sense of something that was never meant to be understood. Tessa had made choices. Choices she hid behind canceled conferences and makeup-covered guilt. Choices she probably started justifying to herself long before I caught on. Maybe even before I had a chance to stop it. Or fix it. If I'm being honest, I think I'd known for a while. Not the facts, not the cufflink or the lies or the man in the house, but the feeling. That cold, quiet pull when someone starts checking out of your life without telling you. That shift from us to her. When I returned to our house the following week, it wasn't because I wanted to work things out. It was to pack the rest of my things. She was there. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and that tired, glassy look she got after pretending too hard. She didn't say anything as I walked in. Just watched me cross the living room, grab the spare keys, and head upstairs. I didn't even need to talk. But of course, she tried. "Eric," she said, her voice flat but fragile. "Are you really doing this?" I stopped on the stairs. Not turning around. Just letting the weight of the moment settle. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I am. I thought you just needed space." "No," I replied. "I needed honesty. And I didn't get it." She didn't follow me. Didn't say another word. Just let me go. I packed like someone escaping a place they once called home, fast, focused, but not rushed. I didn't take everything. Just what mattered. What was mine? My clothes. A few photos of my parents. The notebook with my dad's handwriting inside, a birthday gift from years ago. I left behind everything that felt shared. The bed. The dishes. The couch we picked out at that overpriced store in Durham. All of it could stay with her. It didn't matter anymore. I rented a place downtown, an apartment on the 4th floor with high ceilings and a view of the lake if you tilt your head just right. It smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. The first night there, I slept on the floor with just a blanket and a half-deflated camping pillow. But I slept. And that, more than anything, felt like freedom. In the mornings, I started walking to work instead of driving. Headphones in. No destination other than the same job I'd had for 6 years, but it felt different now. Like I was no longer rushing toward anything, just moving through space at my own pace. I stopped pretending to enjoy the music Tessa liked. I went back to the old stuff, the indie bands she'd rolled her eyes at, the acoustic tracks she'd called mopey. I'd blast them while shaving or cooking eggs or brushing my teeth. I didn't miss the way she used to correct me when I put too much pepper on things or left towels folded wrong. I didn't miss the careful choreography we did around each other when things got tense. Mostly, I didn't miss feeling like a ghost in my own home. People talk about heartbreak like it's this messy explosion, screaming, crying, throwing things. But mine was quiet. Subtle. Like a fever breaking. No more heat. Just sweat and stillness. I started reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in years. Grabbed beers with college buddies. Played pool with a guy from work who always invited me and I always politely declined. I even started responding to texts I used to ignore because I was too tired or too married. One weekend, I visited my brother in Asheville. We hiked, grilled burgers, watched terrible action movies. And somewhere between beers and late-night banter, I realized I was laughing, actually laughing, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. Tessa texted me during that trip. Just a single line. "I hope you're doing okay." I stared at it for a while, then locked my phone and set it face down. She didn't deserve an update. She deserved the silence she once made me live in. In that new apartment, I created small rituals that made me feel like myself again. Sunday morning coffee with real cream, not the almond milk she swore tasted just the same. Open windows when it rained. Leaving the TV on too loud while I cooked. Books scattered across the couch cushions without anyone rearranging them neatly. I didn't start dating right away. I wasn't ready. Not for anything romantic. But I let myself notice people again. Smiles in elevators. A girl at the dog park who had a goofy laugh and said hi every time we passed. I felt things returning to me, pieces I'd forgotten I was allowed to have. One night, I played the voicemail Tessa left me right after I moved out. It was long. Rambling. She cried through half of it and apologized through the rest. She said things like, "I don't know why I did it and I wish I could take it back." But the part that stuck with me most, the part that told me I'd made the right choice, was when she said, "I don't know who I am without you." Because that was the problem. I didn't know who I was without her. And I liked that person. One night, I stood on my little balcony, glass of whiskey in hand, and thought about how far I'd come. How I'd gone from the guy begging for crumbs of affection to the man who chose peace over permission. I didn't need to get even. I didn't need closure. I didn't even need an explanation anymore. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Just leave. Rebuild. Breathe. A few weeks later, I ran into Kate at a friend's birthday, my coworker's sister. I'd met her a couple times before, always in passing. Divorced, mid-30s, sharp wit, and a laugh that hit straight from the chest. She asked me what I'd been up to lately. I smiled and said, starting over. She nodded, held her drink a little tighter, and said, that's not always a bad thing. We talked for an hour. Then, too. Before she left, she said, you don't have to rescue me, you know? I looked at her. Good, I replied. Because I'm not here to be rescued either. She laughed. And it wasn't polite or forced or polished, it was real. I wasn't in love. Not yet. But I was open. And that was enough. Because freedom, I'd learned, isn't a place you arrive. It's a choice you make day after day to stop clinging to things that keep you small. And somewhere between that motel by the lake and this new apartment with the crooked blinds, I had found it. For the first time in years, I wasn't living someone else's version of a life. I was living mine. 3 weeks later, she texted me. You left like a coward. Didn't even explain. I hope you've thought everything through. I stared at it for a few minutes. I didn't feel angry. Or shaken. Just done. So I wrote back. I have. Everything you didn't say. The next day, we met at a small cafe halfway between my new apartment and the house I used to live in. She wasn't wearing makeup. That caught me off guard, not because she looked bad, but because it was the first time in years I'd seen her without the performance. She looked tired. She looked real. She sat down across from me, stirred her coffee, and said, so, you're really ending it? I looked her in the eyes and asked quietly, when did you begin it? That was it. No argument. No long, dragged-out apology. She didn't cry. She didn't defend herself. She just nodded, her eyes shining a little, and looked away. And for once, the silence between us felt honest. These days, my apartment feels less like a reset button and more like a small piece of who I actually am. The windows are big. The sunlight is warm. There's a quiet here that I never had in our house, a quiet that feels earned. On weekends, I ride my bike. I say yes to invites. I cook late at night with music playing, no one asking me to turn it down. And sometimes I sit on the floor eating cereal straight from the box. Because I can. And Kate? We're not rushing into anything. We text, we meet up, we laugh about nothing. She's careful. So am I. But when we had dinner last week, she looked at me and said, you don't have to fix me. Just don't lie. And I swear, I felt something loosen in my chest. Because that's all I've ever wanted too. The past isn't gone, but it's behind me. I keep it in a box with a broken cufflink, a picture I don't look at anymore, and a version of myself I've finally let go of. And now? Now I'm not just surviving. I'm breathing.